The medical scanner hummed quietly in the sterile bay of the twilight meridian. Ji-hoon sat on the examination table, swinging his legs slightly as he waited. His worksuit was torn at the shoulder, and dust from the mining station still clung to his dark hair. He didn't look bothered by any of it. Nara moved around him with precise clicking steps. Her forearms worked the scanner controls while her compound eyes processed the data streaming across multiple screens. As the ship's medical officer, she had examined hundreds of species over her career. Valorians like herself were fragile compared to most spacefaring races, which made her exceptionally careful about crew health. "This is just protocol, Ji-hoon," she said, her translator rendering her clicking speech into standard language. "Everyone who went on that rescue gets a full scan." I know, Ji-hoon replied, smiling slightly. "I feel fine though, really." Tail stood near the doorway, his crystalline body refracting the medical bay's lights into rainbow patterns on the walls. The navigator had insisted on coming along, claiming he wanted to understand what happened during the mining station collapse. In truth, he was curious about the human who had lifted a fallen support beam long enough for 3 trapped miners to escape. The scanner completed its cycle with a soft chime. Nara went still. All 4 of her hands stopped moving. Her antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of distress in her species. "What's wrong?" Tail asked, moving closer. His footsteps made crystalline sounds on the metal floor. Nara didn't answer immediately. She cycled through the scan results again, then a 3rd time. Her translator clicked rapidly as she tried to form words. "Ji-hoon," she finally said, her voice tight. "When exactly did you break 17 bones?" Ji-hoon blinked. "What?" 17 fractures. Throughout your skeletal structure." Nara's hands flew across the controls, bringing up image after image. 3 ribs on your left side. 2 fingers on your right hand. Your left ulna. A hairline fracture in your skull. Compression damage in your lower vertebrae. And these aren't fresh injuries. Some of these are weeks old, months even. Tail's entire body brightened with shock, flooding the room with refracted light. 17 fractures? How are you conscious? How are you alive? Ji-hoon looked genuinely confused. He glanced down at his hands, flexing his fingers. "Oh, that? Yeah, I guess I felt something pop during the rescue. The beam was heavier than I thought. But it's fine now. Fine." Nara's voice rose to a pitch that made her translator crackle. "You have a fractured skull." "Had," Ji-hoon corrected. "You said it's healing, right?" "That's not how biology works." Nara circled him, scanning again as if the machine had made an error. "Fractures of this severity should have rendered you immobile. The pain alone should have caused shock. Your species should have neural inhibitors that prevent movement when damaged." Ji-hoon shrugged, then winced slightly. "Okay, yeah, my shoulder's a bit sore, but I've had worse." Tail made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Worse? What could possibly be worse than 17 broken bones?" "Well, when I was 23, I broke my leg in 3 places during a cave-in on Titan Station. That was rough. Took me 2 months to walk normally again." The silence that followed was profound. Nara's antennae went completely flat against her head, a posture of complete incomprehension. Tail's light dimmed to almost nothing. 2 months, Tail repeated slowly. "A triple fracture, and you recovered to full mobility." "Sure, bones heal. That's what they do." Nara activated the comm system with one trembling hand. "Hyejin, please report to Medical Bay immediately." Within minutes, the human xenobiologist arrived, still wearing her lab coat. Hyejin was shorter than Ji-hoon, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at the scan results and sighed. "Let me guess. Someone finally did a deep scan on Ji-hoon. You knew about this?" Nara's translator nearly sparked with the force of her words. "I didn't know about these specific injuries, but yeah. Humans break bones. It happens." Hyejin pulled up a chair and sat down, clearly preparing for a long explanation. "Look, I know this seems impossible to you, but for humans, fractures are just part of life. Kids break bones falling out of trees. Athletes break bones playing sports. Workers break bones on the job. We heal and move on." Tail moved closer to the displays, studying the images with the intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible equation. "Your bones can repair themselves after catastrophic structural failure?" "Well, catastrophic is a strong word," Hyejin said. "But yes. Broken bones knit back together, usually stronger than before, actually. The body builds extra calcium deposits at the fracture site." "But the pain," Nara insisted. How does he function with this level of damage? Heejin looked at Ji-hoon, who was now examining his fingernails as if this conversation was only mildly interesting. Humans have pretty high pain tolerance. We evolved as persistence hunters. We literally used to chase prey until it died of exhaustion. We can override pain signals when we need to. Override? Tail's light pulsed rapidly. You mean you feel the pain but ignore it? More or less, Ji-hoon said. I mean, yeah, it hurts. But I had a job to do. Those miners would have died if I'd stopped to worry about a few cracks. Nara made a sound her translator couldn't interpret. She pulled up comparative anatomy files, displaying Valorian skeletal structure alongside human bones. When a Valorian suffers a fracture, our nervous system immediately locks the surrounding muscles. We become immobile to prevent further damage. It's a survival mechanism. Without it, we would injure ourselves beyond repair. Most species have similar systems, Tail added. Corinthians like myself will literally shatter if our crystalline structure is compromised. We don't heal. We regrow, and that takes years in stasis. Humans are different, Hyejin said quietly. We're soft and breakable compared to a lot of species, but we're also incredibly adaptive. Our bodies are designed to keep functioning even when damaged. It's not that we don't feel pain. We just don't let it stop us. Ji-hoon slid off the examination table, testing his weight on his legs. Everything held. Everything worked, despite the 17 places where his skeleton had failed and repaired itself. So am I cleared for duty? Nara's antennae quivered. Absolutely not. You're staying in medical observation for at least 48 hours. But I feel fine. That is exactly what concerns me. Tail was still studying the scans, his analytical mind racing through the implications. Humans who could function through injuries that would kill most species. Humans who healed from damage that would require others to grow new body parts. Humans who overrode their own pain receptors through sheer willpower. Captain Bowman needs to know about this, he said finally. Know about what? Ji-hoon asked. That I'm doing my job. No, Tail said, his voice carrying a note of something like awe. That we've been working alongside a species that treats catastrophic injury as a minor inconvenience. Ji-hoon laughed, then clutched his ribs slightly. Okay, maybe not minor, but it's nothing to make a big deal about. Nara pointed firmly at the medical bed. Lie down now and don't move. For how long? Until I understand how you're not dead. As Ji-hoon reluctantly settled onto the bed, Hyejin caught Nara's eye. The xenobiologist's expression was serious now. You should know something. Ji-hoon's not unusual for a human. We're all like this. Every single one of us on this ship has broken bones at some point. We've all kept working through injuries you'd consider fatal. The medical bay fell silent again. Somewhere in the ship's systems, data was being compiled, reports were being written, and the crew of the Twilight Meridian was about to learn something that would change everything they thought they knew about the humans working alongside them. Ji-hoon closed his eyes, already half asleep despite 17 fractures in his body. Nara watched him breathe, steady and calm, and wondered what other secrets the human species was hiding behind their fragile-looking frames. Minho's tail scraped against the floor as he paced the security office. The Quarit security officer had scales that shifted from green to dark gray when he was agitated, and right now they were nearly black. On the screens in front of him, footage from the mining station rescue played in slow motion. There, he said, freezing the image. Watch his left arm. Tail leaned in, his crystalline body reflecting the screen's light. They watched as Ji-hoon reached up to grab a falling cable. His arm bent at an angle that made both of them flinch. That should have broken his radius and ulna, Minho said flatly. But he just keeps moving. They had been reviewing footage for 3 hours now, ever since Nara had shared the medical scan results with the senior crew. What they found was disturbing. In mission after mission, the human showed signs of injury that he simply worked through. Tail pulled up another file. Here, 2 months ago. The coolant leak on Deck 7. The footage showed Ji-hoon crawling through a narrow maintenance tunnel filled with escaped coolant vapor. The temperature reading in the corner of the screen showed -40 degrees. He had stayed in there for 20 minutes repairing the damaged pipe with bare hands because gloves were too thick to work properly. He had frostbite on 8 fingers after that, Minho said, checking the medical log. Nara treated it as minor burns. He was back to work the next day. This isn't normal, Tail said. His light pulsed with agitation. This can't be normal even for humans. Let's ask one. They found Soman in the pilot's ready room, running through flight simulations. The human woman looked up as they entered, then paused her program when she saw their expressions. "This is about Jihoon, isn't it?" She said. "How did you know?" Minyo asked. Soman smiled. "Because everyone's been weird around the humans since yesterday, and I heard Nara nearly had a breakdown over a bone scan." She swiveled her chair to face them fully. "So what do you want to know?" Tail moved closer, his internal structure chiming softly. "Is it true that all humans can survive multiple fractures and continue functioning?" "Well, yeah. I mean, it's not fun, but we can do it." "Have you ever broken bones?" Minyo asked. "Sure, 3 ribs during flight training. Broke my collarbone when I crashed a shuttle on Europa. Fractured my ankle playing soccer when I was 15. She counted them off on her fingers like she was listing grocery items. "Oh, and I cracked a tooth once, but I don't think that counts." The silence that followed made Soman laugh. "Guys, seriously, this is normal. Most humans have broken something by the time they're adults." "But how?" Tail's voice carried genuine confusion. "How do you function? The pain alone should incapacitate you." Soman considered this. "Okay, so here's the thing. Yes, it hurts. Broken ribs especially hurt like hell. Every breath feels like someone's stabbing you. But humans are pretty good at putting pain in a box and dealing with it later. We take painkillers, we breathe through it, and we keep going." "Why?" Minho's scales had faded to a lighter gray, but his tail still twitched with agitation. "Why not stop and heal properly?" "Because stopping can be more dangerous than moving," Soman said simply. "If I'd stopped during that shuttle crash, I would have frozen to death before rescue arrived. If I'd stopped during flight training, I would have failed and never gotten my pilot's license. Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes you have to push through the pain to survive." Tail pulled up a data pad and showed her the footage of Jihoon. "Is this level of injury tolerance normal for your species?" Salman watched the clips, her expression neutral. When they finished, she shrugged. "Yeah, that's pretty standard. Jihoon's a tough guy, but he's not unusual. I've seen construction workers finish their shifts with broken hands. I've seen soldiers keep fighting with cracked ribs. Hell, I once watched my grandmother break her wrist and still finish cooking dinner before she went to the hospital." "Your grandmother?" Minyo sat down heavily. "An elderly human. She was 78. Said the food would burn if she stopped." Soman grinned at the memory. She was more annoyed about the cast making it hard to knit than about the actual broken bone. Tail's light flickered rapidly, his species equivalent of nervous laughter. "This is insane. By every medical standard I understand, you should all be in constant medical care." "Maybe by alien standards," Soman agreed. "But for humans, this is just life. We're kind of fragile, actually. We break easier than a lot of species. But we also heal pretty well, and we're stubborn about not letting injuries slow us down." Nara's voice crackled over the comm system. "Soman, please report to Medical Bay." Soman stood, stretching. "Guess it's my turn for the Inquisition. Want to come watch?" They followed her to Medical, where Nara had apparently decided to scan every human on the ship. Hyejin was already there along with 2 other human crew members. Hyunji the mechanic was arguing with Nara about the necessity of a full body scan. "I'm fine," Hyunji insisted. "I feel perfectly healthy." "That's what Jihoon said," Nara replied. "And he had 17 fractures." "Okay. But that's Jihoon. He's kind of accident-prone." "I heard that," Jihoon called from the recovery bed, where he was supposed to be resting but was instead reading a technical manual on his datapad. Nara ran the scanner over Yunji anyway. The results made her antennae droop. 4 healed fractures. 2 ribs, your left tibia, and your right clavicle. Oh yeah, the collarbone. That was from last year when the engine mount broke loose. Yunji said it like she was remembering a mildly annoying commute. Took a few weeks to feel normal again. "A few weeks," Nara repeated weakly. "For a clavicle fracture. Is that bad?" "For a Valorian, that injury would require 3 months of immobilization and regeneration therapy." Yunji looked genuinely surprised. "Really? Wow, that seems excessive." Heejin stepped forward, her xenobiologist training taking over. "Nara, maybe it would help if I explained human bone structure. We have a skeletal system that's designed for impact absorption and repair. When we break a bone, the body immediately begins rebuilding it. Blood clots form at the fracture site. Then new bone tissue grows to bridge the gap. Within 6 to 8 weeks, most fractures are healed enough for normal use." 6 to 8 weeks? Tail repeated. "That's incredibly fast. For us, it's normal. And the bone usually ends up stronger than before because of the extra calcium deposits. Hijin pulled up comparative anatomy charts. See, human bones are living tissue. They're constantly being broken down and rebuilt at a cellular level. A fracture just accelerates that process in one location. Minho studied the charts with professional interest. As security officer, understanding crew capabilities was part of his job. So humans are constantly repairing themselves? All the time, Hyejin confirmed. We replace our entire skeleton every 10 years or so. Every single bone cell gets recycled and rebuilt. That's horrifying, Nara said. That's biology, Hyejin countered. Different species evolved different strategies for survival. Yours developed hard exoskeletons and instinctive injury avoidance. Ours developed rapid healing and high pain tolerance. Salman sat on an examination table and let Nara scan her. The results showed 3 old fractures, just as she'd mentioned. I know this seems scary to you guys, she said. But from our perspective, you're the fragile ones. If a human breaks a bone, we heal and move on. If you break your exoskeleton, Nara, you could die. Which is why we don't take risks that could cause such injuries, Nara said pointedly. And that's fine for you. But humans evolved differently. We took risks because the alternative was starving or freezing or getting eaten by predators. Our bodies adapted to survive damage, not avoid it. Jihoon finally set down his datapad. Look, I get that this is weird for you. But think about it from our side. We're not trying to be reckless. We're just working with the bodies we have. Yeah, sometimes things break. But they heal. That's not a design flaw. That's resilience. Tail had been processing all of this information, running calculations in his crystalline mind. Captain Bowman needs to revise the crew safety protocols. We've been treating humans like they have the same physical limitations as other species. We do have limitations, Hyejin said. We're not invincible. We can die from injuries just like anyone else. We just have a higher threshold for what counts as a serious injury. How high? Minho asked. The humans all exchanged glances. Finally, Yunji spoke. Well, my uncle once got stabbed in the shoulder and drove himself to the hospital. Does that answer your question? Nara made a sound like a kettle whistling. Tail's light went completely white. Minho's scales rippled through several colors before settling on a pale gray. I think, Teal said slowly, we need to have a very long conversation with the captain. As the alien crew members filed out of medical bay, they left behind 5 humans who were all trying not to laugh at the situation. Did we break them? Salman asked. No, Jihoon said, grinning despite his ribs. But I think we definitely cracked their understanding of biology. Yunji groaned. That was terrible. But accurate, Hyejin added. And even Nara's translator picked up the edge of amusement in her voice despite everything. The alarm started as a low pulse, then escalated to a full shriek that echoed through every corridor of the Twilight Meridian. Jihoon was out of the medical bay bed before Nara could protest, ignoring the sharp pain in his ribs as he ran toward the engine room. All crew to emergency stations. Captain Bowman's voice crackled over the speakers. The Tellurian captain rarely sounded worried, but now there was an edge to his translated words. We have critical damage to the port engine. Life support will fail in 4 hours. Jihoon reached the engine room at the same time as Daehyun, the Morphean engineer. Daehyun's containment suit swirled with anxious patterns as his gaseous form churned inside. Through the transparent faceplate, his energy field pulsed rapid orange and yellow. Show me, Jihoon said. Daehyun pulled up the damage report on a screen. The asteroid field they'd been navigating had been listed as clear, but an unexpected debris wave had struck the ship's port side. A chunk of rock had torn through the outer hull and damaged the engine's cooling system. The breach is exposed to vacuum and radiation, Daehyun said, his voice synthesizer making his words sound mechanical. The temperature in that section is dropping below -200 degrees. We need to seal it and repair the coolant lines or the engine will overheat and destroy what little atmosphere we have left. Yunji arrived next, wiping grease from her hands. She'd been in the middle of routine maintenance when the alarm sounded.
How bad?
Bad, Jihoon said, already pulling up structural diagrams. We need someone outside to patch the hull and repair the cooling lines. The radiation levels are high and the temperature is deadly. Minho entered the room, his security protocols demanding he assess every emergency. EVA suits can handle the radiation and cold, but not for long. 15 minutes maximum exposure for most species before permanent cellular damage occurs. How long to make the repairs? Yunji asked. Daehyun's colors shifted to dark red. 2 hours minimum. Possibly 3. That's impossible, Minho said flatly. No one can survive that long in those conditions. Ji-hoon and Yoonji looked at each other. Something passed between them, an unspoken understanding that made Minho's scales prickle with recognition. No, he said. Absolutely not. We don't have a choice, Ji-hoon said. Daehyun, you can't leave your containment suit in that environment. Tail would shatter in the cold. Nara's exoskeleton would crack from the temperature shifts. Minho, your species needs heat to function, and you have 17 broken bones. Minho's tail slammed against the floor. Nara specifically said you were not cleared for duty. Nara can yell at me later, Ji-hoon said. Right now, Yoonji and I are the only ones who can do this job and survive it. Yoonji was already heading for the EVA equipment locker. We'll work fast. 2 humans can cut the repair time down, maybe 2 hours instead of 3. 2 hours in hard radiation and extreme cold, Minho followed them, his voice rising. You'll die. Probably not, Ji-hoon said, pulling on the lower half of an EVA suit. Humans are pretty resilient. Your medical scans say otherwise. Our medical scans say we're already broken and still working, Yoonji corrected, sealing her suit's leg joints. What's a little radiation going to do that hasn't been done already? Nara's voice burst through the comm system. I am formally objecting to this plan. Ji-hoon is injured. Both humans will suffer severe radiation exposure, hypothermia, and potential oxygen deprivation. This is suicide. Ji-hoon activated his comm link. Noted, we're going anyway. Ji-hoon, Nara, we're the only option. Everyone else will die faster than we will. That's just math. He finished sealing his suit and grabbed a repair kit. Besides, we're Korean. Stubbornness is genetic. Yoonji laughed as she checked her oxygen levels. My grandmother used to say, if you're going to do something, do it properly even if it kills you. I think this qualifies. That's not reassuring. Daehyun's colors flashed through the entire spectrum. The airlock cycled open, revealing the damaged section beyond. Through the torn hull, space glittered with asteroid debris and radiation shimmer. The temperature gauge on Ji-hoon's suit dropped immediately as they stepped through. Stay in contact, Minho ordered. Every 5 minutes you report in. Understood, Ji-hoon said. Then he and Yoonji pushed off into the freezing dark. The damage was worse than the scans had shown. The cooling lines weren't just damaged, they were shredded. Ji-hoon and Yoonji worked in practiced silence, their movements efficient despite the bulky suits and extreme conditions. They'd worked together on dozens of repairs and the partnership showed. First patch going on, Yoonji reported 15 minutes in. Her breath was already showing as mist inside her helmet. The suit's heating system was struggling against the cold. Coolant line 1 sealed, Ji-hoon added. His ribs ached with every movement, but he pushed the pain into that mental box So-min had mentioned. Later. He could deal with it later. 30 minutes in, the radiation alarms in their suits started chirping. They ignored them. How's your oxygen? Yoonji asked. 70%. They kept working. Welding in a vacuum was tricky, and the cold made the metal brittle. Every seal had to be perfect, or the coolant system would fail again under pressure. 45 minutes in, Ji-hoon's hands started shaking. Not from fear, but from the cold seeping through his gloves. He could feel the beginning of frostbite in his fingertips. Ji-hoon, your vital signs are dropping. Nara's voice was tight with fear. Your core temperature is down 3 degrees. Noted, he said through chattering teeth. Still working. You need to come back in. Not done yet. Yoonji was moving slower too. The cold was affecting her motor control. Second coolant line sealed. Moving to third. 1 hour in, they had to take a break. Not because they wanted to, but because their fingers wouldn't respond properly anymore. They held onto the ship's hull, waiting for feeling to return to their hands. You okay? Ji-hoon asked. Freezing, you. Same, also I think I broke another rib. Which one? Does it matter? Yoonji laughed, though it sounded more like a cough. Guess not. They went back to work. 1 hour and 30 minutes in, Minho's voice was nearly frantic. Your radiation exposure is beyond safe limits. You're going to get sick. Yeah, probably, Ji-hoon agreed. His words were slurring slightly. Hypothermia was setting in, but we're almost done. Almost isn't good enough. It'll have to be, Yoonji said. She was working on the final hull patch, her movements mechanical now, pure willpower keeping her going. 1 hour and 45 minutes in, they finished. Ji-hoon activated the coolant system and watched the pressure gauges climb to normal levels. Everything held. It's done, he reported, heading back in. Getting back to the airlock was harder than the repair. Ji-hoon's legs weren't responding properly. Yoonji had to grab him and pull him along even though she was barely functioning herself. The airlock cycled. Warm air flooded in. Ji-hoon collapsed onto the floor, his entire body shaking. Hands pulled at his helmet. Minhyo's worried face appeared above him. Medical team is coming. Stay awake. Not planning to sleep, Ji-hoon mumbled, but his eyes were already closing. He woke up in medical bay. Everything hurt. That was actually a good sign because it meant he wasn't dead. Nara hovered over him, all 4 hands working scanners and administering treatments. You're an idiot, she said. Did it work, he asked. Yes, the engines are stable. Life support is back to normal. We're no longer in danger of dying in space. Her antennae drooped. Instead, I have 2 humans suffering from severe hypothermia. Radiation sickness, frostbite on 8 fingers between you, oxygen deprivation, and in your case, a newly broken rib to add to your collection. So we're fine. You're not fine. You should be dead. Nara's translator crackled with emotion. By every medical principle I understand, what you just did was impossible. Ji-hoon tried to sit up, failed, and settled for turning his head. Hoonji was in the next bed looking as terrible as he felt. She gave him a weak thumbs up. We did it though, she said. You did, Nara admitted, and I will never understand how. Tail appeared in the doorway, his crystalline body casting rainbow light across the room. The captain wants to see you both. When you're able. Tell him we're taking suggestions for our medals, Yoonji said. Tell him we're just glad everyone's safe, Ji-hoon corrected, shooting Yoonji a look. After Tail left, Nara continued treating them in silence. Finally she spoke. Why? Why would you risk this? Ji-hoon thought about it. Because you couldn't, not without dying faster than us. And someone had to do it. But the pain, the damage to your bodies. Bodies heal, Yoonji said quietly. Dead crewmates don't. The math was pretty simple. Nara was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something neither human had seen before. She placed one hand gently on each of their shoulders, a gesture of deep respect in Valorian culture. Thank you, she said. Even if you are idiots. Ji-hoon smiled despite the pain. You're welcome, even if you're going to yell at us later. Oh, I absolutely am, Nara assured him. But first, you're both staying in medical bay for at least a week. A week? Yoonji protested. Would you prefer 2? The humans settled back into their beds without further argument. Outside medical bay, the rest of the crew was learning a new lesson about humanity. They didn't just survive the impossible. They did it to protect others. And somehow, that was even more terrifying than the broken bones. The shuttle docked 3 days after the engine crisis. Ji-hoon was still in medical bay, recovering from radiation treatment when the announcement came through. Ambassador Sung-hoon was arriving early. His diplomatic schedule adjusted due to the Twilight Meridian's emergency. Ji-woo, the human cultural liaison, met the ambassador at the airlock. Sung-hoon's tank moved on smooth wheels, the water inside perfectly clear. His aquatic form rippled with bioluminescent patterns that served as his species' primary communication. The translator built into his tank rendered these patterns into speech. The ship sustained damage? Sung-hoon asked as Ji-woo guided him through the corridors. Yes, but the crew handled it. We're safe now, Ji-woo replied. I was told humans were involved in the repair. Something in his tone made Ji-woo look at him more carefully. You've heard about what happened? Word travels fast through diplomatic channels. 2 humans exposed themselves to lethal conditions for several hours and survived. The medical community is very interested. Ji-woo smiled slightly. I bet they are. They found the rest of the crew gathered in the observation deck. Captain Bowman had called a meeting, and the presence of a Lithian ambassador gave it additional weight. The Tellurian captain's silicon-based form stood near the viewing window, his surface reflecting the stars beyond. Sung-hoon's tank positioned itself where everyone could see him. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed in what Ji-woo recognized as a respectful greeting. I requested this meeting to better understand the humans serving on this vessel. Recent events have raised questions. What kind of questions? Hee-jin asked. The xenobiologist sat next to Nara, who still looked exhausted from treating Ji-hoon and Yoonji. Questions about your species' capabilities and limitations, about what you consider normal. Sung-hoon's patterns shifted to a deeper blue. My people are telepathic. We sense emotions and tensions, pain. When I arrived on this ship, I sensed something unusual from the humans. You carry pain constantly, yet you function as if you don't. We're aware of it, Jiwoo said carefully. We just don't let it stop us. That's what disturbs me, Sung-hoon admitted. For Lithians, pain is a mental emergency. It triggers immediate telepathic distress calls to others nearby. We can't function through it. When we're injured, we must retreat to our healing pools for weeks, sometimes months, to recover both physically and mentally. Salmon spoke up from where she lounged against the wall. Humans don't work that way. Pain is just information. It tells us something's wrong, but it doesn't shut us down. Unless it's really bad, Yoonji added. She'd been released from medical bay that morning, though she still moved stiffly. But even then, we can usually push through for a while. Sung-hoon's colors shifted to confused purple. I don't understand how that's possible. Pain is the body's warning system. For you, it's a shutdown command, Hijin explained. For humans, it's more like an alert. We acknowledge it and decide what to do about it. Even with multiple fractures? Tail asked. He'd been studying human biology obsessively since Jihoon's initial scan. Even with radiation sickness and hypothermia? Those aren't comfortable, Jihoon said from the doorway. He'd insisted on attending the meeting despite Nara's protests, and he leaned heavily against the frame. But they're survivable. We've evolved to keep going even when damaged. Sung-hoon studied him with the focus that came from telepathic perception. You're in pain right now. Significant pain. Yet you're standing and speaking as if nothing is wrong. Something is wrong, Jihoon corrected. I'm just not letting it control me. How? The question came from Minho, who'd been silent until now. We've all seen the footage, read the medical reports, heard the stories, but I still don't understand how you override your own nervous system. Jiwoo stepped forward, moving into her role as cultural liaison. Maybe it would help to talk about human history, our evolution, the way we developed as a species. She activated a display screen and pulled up images of Earth. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't have claws or fangs or armor. We weren't the strongest or fastest, but we had endurance. We could track prey for hours, days even, until it collapsed from exhaustion. That requires ignoring exhaustion, Tail observed. Exactly, and ignoring pain, ignoring hunger, ignoring fear. Our ancestors who could push through discomfort survived. The ones who stopped when things hurt died. Jiwoo brought up more images. Humans climbing mountains, crossing deserts, surviving in Arctic conditions. We spread across Earth by going to places that should have killed us. We survived by refusing to quit, but that was survival necessity, Sung-hoon argued. You're technologically advanced now. Why maintain such dangerous tendencies? Because they're not separate from who we are, Hijin said. It's not like humans decided to ignore pain. Our biology developed that way. Our brains are wired to override survival instincts when necessary. Nara clicked thoughtfully. When I treat humans, your endorphin levels spike dramatically under stress. Natural painkillers flood your system. Adrenaline too, Soman added. Humans in crisis can do things that are normally impossible. Lift cars, run faster, ignore wounds. It's a built-in emergency system. We have stories, Jihoon said quietly. Throughout human history, stories of people doing impossible things. Soldiers fighting with mortal wounds. Parents lifting vehicles off their children. Explorers surviving conditions that should have killed them. These aren't rare miracles. They're just humans being human. The silence that followed was heavy with consideration. Finally, Daehyun spoke, his gaseous form swirling anxiously in his containment suit. But at what cost? Your bodies are damaged. Jihoon has 18 fractures now. Yoonji has frostbite. You're both sick from radiation. How is this strength when it destroys you? Because we heal, Yoonji said firmly. Yeah, we're damaged. But give us a few weeks and we'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. Our bones will be stronger. Our bodies will have adapted. And if you don't heal, Minho pressed, what if the damage is permanent? The humans exchanged glances. Jiwoo spoke for all of them. Then we adapt to that too. Humans with disabilities find ways to function. We build tools, develop techniques, support each other. Stopping isn't in our nature. Sung-hoon's colors cycled through several emotions. Confusion, concern, and something that might have been admiration. I think I'm beginning to understand. Your species doesn't just tolerate pain. You've made peace with it. More like we've accepted it as part of existence, Hyejin said. We know we're fragile. We break easily compared to many species. But we also know we can heal, we can adapt, and we can keep going. That knowledge makes us brave in ways that might seem reckless to others. It does seem reckless, Nara said bluntly. From a medical standpoint, everything humans do seems designed to cause injury. Maybe, Ji-hoon admitted. But from a human standpoint, you all seem overly cautious. Nara, you won't lift anything heavy because you might crack your exoskeleton. Tail, you avoid any situation that might cause impact damage. Dae-hyun, you never leave your containment suit. To us, that's limiting. It's survival, Tail said. So is our way, Soman countered. Different strategies for different species. You survive by avoiding damage. We survive by accepting that damage happens and dealing with it. Captain Bowman finally spoke, his translated voice carrying authority. This conversation has been enlightening. But I have practical concerns. How do we maintain crew safety when half the crew considers serious injury to be a minor inconvenience? You don't change human nature, Jiwoo said. But you can work with it. Maybe instead of trying to stop humans from taking risks, you acknowledge that we calculate risks differently. What seems impossible to you might be merely difficult for us. And maybe, Hyejin added, you recognize that having humans on your crew means having people who can do things others can't. We're not invincible, but we're resilient. That has value. Sung-hoon's patterns pulsed thoughtfully. I came here to understand humans. I believe I'm beginning to. You're not reckless. You're not ignoring danger. You simply have a different relationship with pain and damage than most species. You've evolved to accept injury as temporary rather than catastrophic. That's a good way to put it, Yoonji said. But it's still terrifying, Nara added. Watching you work through injuries that should incapacitate you goes against everything I know about medicine. Then maybe you need to expand your medical knowledge, Ji-hoon suggested gently. Learn to treat humans the way we need to be treated, not the way you'd treat other species. Nara's antennae twitched. That would require completely rewriting protocols. Yes, Hyejin agreed. It would. But if you're going to have humans on your crew, you need to understand human medicine. We can't be treated like fragile Valorians or crystalline Corinthians. We need doctors who understand that a human with 3 broken ribs can still work, even if it's not advisable. I would never advise that, Nara said firmly. No, but you might understand why we do it anyway. The meeting continued for another hour, questions flowing freely. The alien crew members asked about human childhood injuries, sports culture, pain management, and healing times. The humans tried to explain concepts that were so natural to them they'd never had to articulate them before. By the end, no one fully understood each other. But there was a new respect growing, a recognition that different didn't mean wrong. As they dispersed, Sung-hoon's tank moved beside Jiwoo. Tell me honestly, do humans truly not fear pain? Jiwoo considered the question. We fear it, but we fear stopping more. We fear failing to protect others, failing to complete necessary tasks, failing to survive. Pain is temporary. Those failures could be permanent. That, Sung-hoon said, his colors glowing with insight, may be the bravest thing I've ever heard. 3 weeks after the engine crisis, Captain Bowman called a formal crew assembly. The observation deck had been arranged with seating for all body types, standard chairs for humanoids, shallow pools for aquatic species, heated platforms for cold-blooded crew, and cushioned spaces for gaseous forms in containment suits. Ji-hoon entered with Yoonji, both moving normally now. The radiation sickness had passed, the frostbite had healed, and even Ji-hoon's 18th fractured rib had knitted back together. Nara had scanned them both that morning and found them in perfect health, which had made her antennae twitch with frustrated acceptance. Please be seated, Bowman said, his silicon form catching the light from the viewing window. The stars beyond provided a quiet backdrop to the gathering. The crew settled in. Ji-hoon noticed that the seating arrangement had changed from usual. Instead of species clustering together, everyone was mixed. Tail sat between Somin and a Valorian technician. Minho's heated platform was positioned near Hyejin and Jiwoo. Even Dae-hyun had moved his containment suit closer to the human section. The past month has been enlightening, Bowman began. We faced a crisis that tested our capabilities and revealed truths about our crew that I had not fully appreciated. His translated voice carried warmth. Today I want to acknowledge those truths and discuss how we move forward as a unified team. He gestured toward the humans. When I hired human crew members, I reviewed your technical qualifications, your education, your experience, your problem-solving abilities. What I did not review, because I did not know to look for it, was your species' unique approach to survival. Here it comes, Yunji whispered to Ji-hoon, the speech about how we're reckless. But Bowman surprised them. You are not reckless. You are calculated risk-takers who understand your own capabilities better than we understood them. You assessed a situation that appeared impossible by our standards and recognized it as merely difficult by yours. Nara spoke up, her 4 hands gesturing as she talked. I have studied human medicine extensively over these past weeks. I have read your medical journals, reviewed case studies, and consulted with human doctors across the communication network. What I learned has fundamentally changed how I practice medicine. She pulled up images on the display screen. Human bodies are extraordinary, not because they're stronger or more durable than other species, but because they're designed for adaptation. When injured, you don't just heal. You improve. Broken bones become stronger. Torn muscles rebuild denser. Damaged skin develops thicker scar tissue. You are literally built to become more resilient through trauma. That sounds painful, Tail observed. It is, Hyejin confirmed, but it's also effective. Humans didn't survive on Earth by being the toughest species. We survived by being the most adaptable. Minho stood, his scales shifting to a respectful blue-green. As security officer, I have revised all emergency protocols. The previous versions assumed all crew members had similar physical limitations. That was my error. I now understand that humans can operate in conditions that would kill most species. Not because you're immune to damage, but because you can function despite it. We're not invincible, Ji-hoon felt compelled to point out. We can die just like anyone else. But you can survive situations where death would be immediate for others, Minho countered. That distinction matters. New protocols will account for this. When we face environmental hazards, temperature extremes, or radiation exposure, humans will be prioritized for tasks that other species simply cannot perform. Solman raised her hand. Just to be clear, we're not volunteering to be the crew's sacrificial damage sponges. No, Bowman agreed. You are being recognized as specialized assets with unique capabilities. Just as we wouldn't ask humans to survive in a zero-oxygen environment like Daehyun can, we won't ask other species to endure what you can endure. Sung-hoon's tank rolled forward, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with measured thought. I have reported my observations to the Lithian Council. They are fascinated by humanity's approach to pain and survival. We have much to learn from a species that treats temporary damage as acceptable cost for permanent solutions. Though I still think you're all slightly insane, Nara added. But her tone was affectionate now. Tail's crystalline body chimed softly as he stood. I have compiled data on human achievements throughout your history. The list is remarkable. You've survived shipwrecks, plane crashes, building collapses, and natural disasters that would have eliminated any other species. You've explored every environment on your planet, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. You've done all of this with bodies that are objectively fragile. He projected images as he spoke. Humans climbing frozen peaks, diving into volcanic caverns, working in extreme heat and cold, surviving in situations that defied logic. What I realized, Tail continued, is that human strength isn't physical, it's mental. You have the ability to look at pain, acknowledge it, and choose to continue anyway. That's not stubbornness. That's willpower on a level most species can't comprehend. We're not special, Jiwoo said quietly. We're just human. This is normal for us. That's exactly what makes you special, Bowman replied. You treat the extraordinary as ordinary. You face the impossible and call it merely difficult. You break and heal and break again, and you never stop moving forward. He moved to stand directly in front of the human crew members. Ji-hoon, Yoonji, you saved this ship. You saved every life aboard when you went into conditions that should have killed you. You did it knowing the cost, accepting the pain, and trusting your bodies to survive. That is courage of the highest order. We did our jobs, Ji-hoon said, uncomfortable with the praise. You exceeded your jobs, Minho corrected. You exceeded every reasonable expectation. And in doing so, you taught us something valuable. What's that? Yoonji asked. That resilience isn't about avoiding damage. It's about accepting that damage happens and continuing anyway. Minho's tail moved in a gesture of respect. My species values strength and combat ability. But watching you work, I realized we've been defining strength wrong. True strength is getting hurt and getting back up. Breaking and healing. Facing fear and moving forward. That's what humans do. Yuna, the human communications officer who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. You're making us sound heroic. But really, we're just doing what humans have always done. We survive, we adapt. We keep going because stopping means dying, and we're not ready to die yet. That's the human condition in a sentence, Hyejin said with a smile. We're too stubborn to quit. Bowman activated a holographic display. Official commendations appeared listing Ji-hoon and Yoonji's actions during the engine crisis. These will be filed with the Interspecies Cooperative Fleet. Your actions reflect not just on yourselves, but on humanity as a whole. You've proven that humans belong among the stars not despite your fragility, but because of your resilience. There's something else, Nara said. She pulled up a document. New medical protocols for human crew members. They account for your pain tolerance, your healing rates, and your tendency to underreport injuries. She looked directly at Ji-hoon. This includes mandatory scans after any hazardous mission, regardless of whether you claim to feel fine. That seems fair, Ji-hoon admitted. And a new policy, Minho added. Humans will no longer be discouraged from taking on high-risk tasks. Instead, we'll properly assess which species is best suited for each situation. Sometimes that will be humans. Sometimes it won't. We can work with that, Soman agreed. The meeting continued with practical discussions about crew integration, communication improvements, and training protocols. But the tone had shifted. There was less fear now, less confusion. The alien crew members no longer looked at the humans with concern or worry. Instead, there was respect, curiosity, and something that might have been admiration. As the assembly concluded, crew members mingled, conversations flowing freely between species. Ji-hoon found himself talking with Tail about bone density calculations. Yoonji discussed engine modifications with Daehyun. Selman argued good-naturedly with Minho about combat techniques. Nara approached Ji-hoon with a datapad. Final scan results. All 18 fractures fully healed. Your bone density has actually increased at every fracture site exactly as Hyejin predicted. Told you we heal, Ji-hoon said. I'm still not comfortable with how casually you treat serious injuries, Nara admitted. But I'm learning to accept that humans operate by different rules. We appreciate that, Ji-hoon said sincerely. And we appreciate you caring enough to worry about us even when we don't worry about ourselves. Nara's antennae perked up slightly, a sign of pleased embarrassment. Someone has to keep you alive. And you do it well, Yoonji added, joining them. Even if you do yell at us a lot. You give me many reasons to yell. They laughed together, the sound mixing with the general hum of conversation filling the observation deck. Through the viewing window, stars streamed past as the twilight meridian continued its journey through space. Later, in the engineering bay, Ji-hoon worked on routine maintenance alongside Daehyun. The Morphean's gaseous form swirled with content yellow patterns. Can I ask you something? Daehyun said. Sure. Does it still hurt? The places where you were broken? Ji-hoon considered the question as he adjusted a power coupling. Sometimes. When the weather changes or if I move wrong. But it's background noise now. I barely notice it. I don't understand how you live like that. I don't understand how you live in a suit all the time, Ji-hoon replied. But you do because that's what your species needs. This is what we need. We live with a little pain because the alternative is not living at all. Daehyun pulsed thoughtfully. Captain Bowman was right. You are extraordinary. We're really not, Ji-hoon insisted. We're just human. That, Daehyun said, is what makes you extraordinary. That evening, Bowman made a final log entry. His silicon fingers moved across the datapad with practiced precision. Ship's log, Captain Bowman, Twilight Meridian. Day 84 of current mission. The crew has emerged stronger from our recent crisis, not despite the challenges we faced, but because of them. I have learned valuable lessons about leadership, about diversity, and about the nature of strength. When I recruited humans for this crew, I saw them as technically proficient engineers and scientists. What I failed to see was their fundamental nature as survivors. They are a species that evolved to overcome impossible odds, and that evolution shows in everything they do. They feel pain as acutely as any species, perhaps more so. But they have learned to acknowledge pain without letting it control them. They break easily, yet they heal stronger. They fear death, yet they face it when necessary to protect others. This is not recklessness. This is calculated courage. This is humanity. I am honored to have them among my crew. They have taught us all something valuable, that true strength isn't measured in what you can withstand without breaking, but in how you continue after you've broken. We are better for having humans aboard. The galaxy is better for having humanity among the stars. Bowman set down the datapad and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in the ship, Ji-hoon was probably already back to work despite Nara's protests. Shunji was likely modifying something that didn't need modification. Soman was running flight simulations. Hyejin was studying some alien organism. Ji-woo was coordinating with other vessels. Yuna was managing communications, all of them doing their jobs. All of them carrying old injuries that had healed. All of them human with everything that word implied. And Bowman, who had lived for 300 cycles and commanded ships for half of those, found himself grateful for the chaos, the concern, and the incredible resilience that came with having humans on his crew. They were infuriating, concerning, and absolutely irreplaceable. They were human, and that, he decided, was exactly what the Twilight Meridian needed.